Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights has accused the U.S.-led coalition of killing 64 civilians in airstrikes in a Syrian village controlled by the self-proclaimed Islamic State. The group said 31 children were among those killed late last week near the northern city of Kobani in Aleppo province, marking what it called the worst civilian loss from a single attack since the United States launched its campaign against ISIL. The Pentagon says it's still assessing whether it should open an investigation, but denied there was any information to suggest civilians were killed. This comes as Amnesty International has released a new report saying Syrian civilians in Aleppo province are, quote, being subjected to appalling human rights violations by both the Syrian government and many opposition groups. In Nepal, the death toll from a 7.8 magnitude earthquake has topped 7,500. Scores of bodies have been discovered in the remote village of Langtang along a popular Himalayan trekking route. It's believed the entire village was wiped out. Nepali Foreign Minister Mahendra Bahadur Pandey said the death toll could still reach 10,000.
There may be 10,000 people to be dead, it is supposed, but we wish it not have to be in that number. But the final number will be at the time when we will complete to remove the debris and find out what is the reason. How long will that take?
In Burundi, the Constitutional Court has ruled President Pierre Nkurunziza can run for a third term as deadly protests against his bid continue into their second week. Secretary of State John Kerry has called the re-election bid unconstitutional. Burundi's constitution allows presidents to serve only 2 terms, but Nkurunziza was appointed to his first term by Parliament. The court's decision to allow his re-election bid comes after the vice president of the court fled the country, telling Agence France-Presse a majority of the court believed the bid was unconstitutional, but the judges had faced, quote, enormous pressure and even death threats to side with the president. Police reportedly shot 4 protesters dead Monday, bringing the death toll to at least 13. The aid group Save the Children has reported dozens of migrants have drowned in the Mediterranean Sea after their boat sank. More than 1,750 people from Africa and the Middle East have died so far this year trying to cross the Mediterranean to Europe. Italy says it's rescued thousands of people in recent days. The self-proclaimed Islamic State has claimed responsibility for this weekend's attack in Texas on an anti-Islam event, which included a contest for drawing the Prophet Muhammad. It's unclear whether ISIL actually coordinated the attack. The 2 gunmen were shot dead outside the event in Garland, Texas. No one else was killed. The gunmen have been identified as Phoenix, Arizona roommates Elton Simpson and Adir Sufi. Simpson, a U.S.-born convert to Islam, had been under FBI surveillance since 2006 and was convicted in 2011 of lying to FBI agents about plans to travel to Somalia. He was sentenced to probation after a judge found federal prosecutors had not proved their argument he planned to trip for purposes of, quote, violent jihad. The FBI and Phoenix police had reportedly been monitoring Simpson's posts about ISIL on social media. The event targeted by the attack was organized by the anti-Islam activist Pamela Geller. It came just months after gunmen in Paris, France, attacked Charlie Hebdo newspaper known for its satirical drawings of the Prophet Muhammad. Aliyah Salem, executive director of the Council on American Islamic Relations chapter in North Texas, condemned the violence but criticized the event.
The Muslim community at large in DFW made a collective decision not to attend or even protest Sunday's events in an effort to ignore the hateful actions intended to incite the Muslim community, but also to give an unchallenged space for them to have their event. While we in no way condone the behavior of these criminals that opened fire, and as Americans, we absolutely uphold the right to freedom of expression, we must ask ourselves, at what point does free speech become hate speech, especially when the intention is so clearly to incite a violent response?
A new report based on the testimonies of Israeli soldiers has concluded the massive civilian death toll from last summer's Israeli assault on Gaza resulted from a, quote, policy of indiscriminate fire. The Israeli veterans group Breaking the Silence released testimonies of more than 60 Israeli officers and soldiers, which it says illustrate a, quote, broad ethical failure, which, quote, comes from the top of the chain of command. More than 2,200 Palestinians were killed in the assault, the vast majority civilians, while in Israel, 73 people were killed, all but 6 of them soldiers. In a video made by Breaking the Silence, a first sergeant, his voice distorted, describes how a commander told him, quote, there are no innocent civilians, and to assume anyone within 200 or 400 meters of the Israeli Defense Forces was an enemy.
And I quote, the rules of engagement are, any person at a distance that could put you at risk, you kill him with no need for clearance, meaning anyone at a distance of 200, 300, 400 meters from us isn't an ordinary civilian. According to IDF logic, he must be there for a reason, because an ordinary civilian would flee the area, and so we must kill him with no need for clearance. For me, it was just spine-tingling.
The Republican leader of the New York State Senate has been arrested, along with his son, on accusations of extortion, fraud, and soliciting bribes. Federal prosecutors have accused State Senator Dean Skelos of soliciting payments for his son from a developer and an environmental company in exchange for political favors. In a recorded conversation, his son, Adam Skelos, acknowledges getting a job as a consultant to the environmental firm Abtec, which sells stormwater filters, even though he, quote, literally knew nothing about water or, any of that stuff, unquote. Preet Bharara, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, unveiled the charges.
And the complaint in multiple places alleges that Dean Skelos' support for certain infrastructure projects and legislation was often based not on what was good for his constituents or good for New York, but rather on what was good for his son's bank accounts. By now, 2 things should be abundantly clear. First, public corruption is a deep-seated problem in New York State. It is a problem in both chambers. It is a problem on both sides of the aisle. And second, we are deadly serious about tackling that problem.
The charges come just months after Democratic New York Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver resigned following charges he took millions of dollars in bribes. The mother of a 12-year-old boy fatally shot by police in Cleveland, Ohio, has moved into a homeless shelter and remains unable to bury her son 5.5 months after he was killed. Tamir Rice was playing with a toy gun when police pulled up and fatally shot him within 2 seconds of their arrival at the park. They failed to provide medical help and tackled Tamir's sister to the ground as she tried to run to help him. Now his family has asked a judge to reject the officers' bid to delay their civil rights lawsuit, pending an investigation by the Sheriff's Department. The motion says Rice's mother, Samaria Rice, is living with Tamir's sister in a homeless shelter, quote, because she could no longer live next door to the killing field of her son. The family has also waited to bury Tamir in case more evidence is needed from his body. Samaria Rice and her uncle Mike spoke at a news conference on Monday.
Less than a second, my son is gone, and I want to know how long I got to wait for justice.
My niece here has been displaced out of her home as a result of this, had to get emergency shelter as a result of this injustice. What I'm here to do is support her, and we do want to know how long. All of us have seen the video. In less than 0.78 seconds, 2 shots was fired. They said that they told him to put his hands up 3 times. That could not have happened from what we saw in the video.
Peaceful protests continue in Baltimore, Maryland, over the death of Freddie Gray of spinal injuries in police custody. During a solidarity protest over Gray's death in New York last week, a restaurant patron accosted protesters shouting "White Lives Matter" and telling activist and student Betty Yu he hoped she got raped. The man, Sam Puglisi, was the president of the company which makes Jala brand Greek yogurt. His company said he's resigned, quote, as a result of our core values. President Obama is set to nominate Marine Corps Commandant General Joseph Dunford to become the next chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, replacing General Martin Dempsey, who's retiring. Dunford led the U.S. NATO occupation force in Afghanistan for 18 months starting in 2013, overseeing the drawdown of U.S. troops and purported transfer of security control to Afghanistan. He also led a regiment during the 2003 invasion of Iraq, earning the nickname Fighting Joe. 5 students at Tufts University in Medford, Massachusetts, have launched a hunger strike to protest the university's plans to cut 17% of its janitorial workforce in June. The students began their strike on Sunday in a bid to save the janitors' jobs. Fellow students are camping out in the Solidarity outside Tufts' main administration building. And the folk singer Guy Carawan, who popularized the song We Shall Overcome for activists in the civil rights movement, has died at the age of 87. Carawan became music director of the Highlander Folk School in Tennessee in '59. In a 2004 interview on Democracy Now!, Carawan's friend, the great late Pete Seeger, recalled how Carawan helped make the song We Shall Overcome a rallying cry.
It was a friend of mine, Guy Carawan, who made it famous. He picked up my way of singing it, We Shall Overcome, although there was another teacher there, Septima Clark, a black woman. She felt that shall, like me, she felt it opened up the mouth better than will. So that's the way she sang it. Anyway, Guy Carawan in 1960 taught it to the young people at the founding convention of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC for short. And a month later, it wasn't a song, it was the song throughout the South.
Guy Carawan died in his sleep at home after a battle with Alzheimer's disease on Saturday, one day before what would have been Pete Seeger's 96th birthday. Pete Seeger died last January. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.